2, 1. Blog Talk Radio.
He took an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. By some, he's been called controversial.
I'll keep my freedom, I'll keep my guns, try to keep my money and my religion too. Now keep in mind that some of my guests have been approached by Homeland Security or FBI saying, why are you going on the Clay Douglas show?
My message to those guys, if they're listening this morning, is go get a cup of coffee. Maybe you'll learn something.
We both took the same oath, to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I don't recall there being an expiration date on that. I'm going to keep my big VA, keep my friends the same, keep the government out of my business, and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition to the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Dr. Greg Evensen. Greg is a former Kansas State Trooper, award-winning Kansas lawman. He's an educator, he's an author, a musician, vocalist, and now he's a radio talk show host. Why in the world would you want to do something like that, Greg?
Well, Clay, clearly I had a bad moment, I guess, sticking on there. The reason that motivates me, just like you, and by the way, it's an honor to be on your show.
Thank you,
I have
sir.
a great deal of respect for you, and you're a stand-up guy. That's the kind of men I like to hang with, and I'll tell you, there's just too few of us left. I can feel them pushing the circle a little tighter, but that just gives me a better free fire zone.
Well, it's interesting. I'm doing my new series now that I'm offering to the mainstream. Doubt if many people will take it, but it's called, 20th Century Warrior in a 21st century setting. We've got a whole new set of rules here. There's a whole new type of warfare going on, and we're the enemy. I filmed the first Homeland Security meeting with law enforcement, briefing law enforcement, and they're talking about the enemy being weak, not having planes and helicopters and bombs, but so they're going to use unconventional tactics. I think they were talking about us, Greg.
Well, you're right. I've got the distinction, and I take it as a true honor, that I'm listed number 4th in the state of Michigan by that pervert Morris Dees and the Southern Poverty Law Center as being a homegrown terrorist in my state. The people, clearly, Clay, the people now that stand for the Constitution, and we've been down this road many times, but it's true nonetheless, and people need to keep hearing it. When the government and the police agencies, the security apparatus, begins to call you by name a terrorist because you stand for the things that Americans always did stand for, that veterans were willing to take the oath and go to war for, at least they thought it was the right thing, and all of this, at the end of the day, when you end up the bad guy, you got to be asking yourself, how did this happen, number one, and number two, really? I'm the enemy? Well, in their view of it, when they're communist and Muslim and all the rest of it, yes, we are the enemy.
Morris Dees and Southern ADL, Southern Poverty Law, they all told the whole world that Clay Douglas started the militias in New Mexico. He advertised them in this magazine. And they just didn't bother to tell anyone that I did it in the governor's office. It wasn't exactly a terrorist group before Oklahoma City.
Well, that's right, and I remember those days well. I didn't know you real well back then, but I thought, man, this guy number one's got a lot of guts. Number two, he's got to have something that he knows that I don't. But it doesn't matter. Where in the world? Well, it mattered, but I mean, where in the world did militia become such an atrocious connotation for anybody? It's an honorable title and it's an honorable concept. Where is it that people just decided that because you and I thought differently and we viewed liberty and freedom just as it is, a single elemental component of the history of this nation, the reason the nation was brought into being, where did it suddenly just evaporate and go away? Well, I'll tell you what happened. When corruption became governmental, when immorality and the pursuit of drugs and all the rest of it became a daily endeavor for many Americans, when entitlement checks were suddenly something to be sought after like a trophy, when the world went upside down, then the people that were pursuing true liberty and freedom and sovereignty from themselves and their families and their nation did, Clay, become the enemy. We have become it because the government, the United States, I'm sorry to say, has become a socialist monolith police state that shows the dying moments of a former vast, wonderful, respected republic.
You know, we had an ally that stopped the first attempt at one world government. Are you aware of that? Who that was?
Well, I'm afraid I would guess wrong, so please tell me.
It was the Russian Tsar. He stood with us, and the United States and Russia would not sign on to the League of Nations. So
okay, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah.
Two things happened. The Bolsheviks went into Russia. They murdered the Tsar, murdered his family, and started this whole thing.
Right.
And
right.
Here that tactic wouldn't work. So here they gave us the Federal Reserve.
I agree.
Which, by the way, their charter is supposed to expire next year. That ought to be interesting. And we've got some movement. Not the Patriots. I'm really disappointed in the Patriots. They really have divide and conquer. If you don't believe like we believe, you know, we're Baptists, and we heard that you dance out there, you know.
Yeah. That's a good one. They don't preach, I dance.
I mean, you know, I don't care what religion you are, because the Constitution of the United States, you know, that covers you. That covers you. You want to stick your nose in the dirt and your ass up in the air, as long as you don't expect me to do it, I don't have a problem with it. You want to bang your head against that wailing wall, knock yourself out, I'll watch. And you know, if you want to get on your knees and grovel to God for a Cadillac, I'll just put in a good word for you and make sure you don't drop it on top of you. But we do have a serious thing here, and I just did an article, just did a story the other day, Greg, and the title on it was a quote that to know who rules over you, simply find out who you're not allowed to criticize. And that seems to me to be the media and the Zionist communist. I mean, you know, Rabbi Stephen Weiss said some call it communism, I call it Judaism.
Wow.
And we've got two presidential candidates right now. I've got pictures of them up on my website, both wearing a little yarmulke and beating their head against a wailing wall in a foreign country. Now, this is, I'll be accused by the ADL and Southern Poverty Law of being anti-Semitic, but that's really not the case. I don't care what the little, you know, frankly, I don't know who my grandmothers slept with, so, you know, it's not what race you are, it's not what color you are, it's not what religion you are. It's, are you working for a foreign country, and are you trying to enslave the American people? Now, they've refined the art of slavery, in my opinion, to the point where the slaves don't know they're slaves. I'm not a slave, man. I can go get my pickup and go get a beer. How do we fight that? They have created an apathy in the people, and I blame that partially on the greatest mind control tool ever invented. I think they call it television.
No, that's correct, and you've very succinctly put it out there for people, and I know you do that on a regular basis. And what bothers me, Clay, bothers me deeply. I'm just going to tell you so people will get what they'll understand what gets under my skin, and that is that we have continuously, consistently beat this drum about, can you stand alone? Can you, and not just physically alone, but can you stand away from the crowd? Can you see the direction your life needs to take? Can you shelter your family and your friends and what little community might be around you that you're of like mind? Can you see what it's going to take to break away from this mindset, this melding and molding of a mind that goes in a direction that doesn't do anything for anybody? You can't raise a farm animal, you can't raise a garden, you can't cut wood on your own, you can't do anything to sustain yourself without looking for a government program, a government handout, or government direction at somebody's idea of what you need to do, Clay, and what I need to do without being given independence. This is what the whole story has been about, and we've let it slip through our fingers to the point that I truly don't think we can get it back. In fact, I don't want it back in the form it's been. It's so corrupted. We're going to have to start again.
Well, my friend Richard Kelly Hoskins, written a number of books, another one of those anti-Semites out there. He says that the foundation of every civilization is the self-sufficient family farm. During the Depression, 34% of Americans lived and worked on farms or ranches. We fed ourselves. And what they have done since, and by the way, the other point of deception, and you may disagree with me on this, because as a former law officer, you enforce the law, and I come from a background that I think the CIA is running all the drugs into this country. And
I agree.
In the 30s, they stole our #1 cash crop by trying to make it into a drug and demonize the blacks. Oh, they're smoking marijuana, and they stole our $1 billion crop. That would be a $1 trillion crop today. Why is China, Russia, Canada, and Mexico allowed to grow hemp, and we can't in this country?
Well, I'll tell you why, Clay. And I read it again last night. It's really propitious that you would say that. But look, the government has patented cannabis.
Yes, sir.
And they have done it because they realize now, and they've kept it from the American people. But and it was something that the American people, the frontier days and the colonial days, they knew that there was great healing properties in cannabis. And because of that, and again, it always goes to the profit motive. It's power, money, and control with government. So whatever look, when I was a cop, I thought, man, I got plenty to do. I don't need to mess with this. But it was really pushed because the people who had access just didn't have issues, many of them, and many of them were good independent folks. They didn't bother anybody. They were harvesting some hemp and using it for a variety of reasons. But now that it's come clear that this is a patented substance now, and before, you see they've set a precedent here too, because you could never patent natural things like plants and so forth. You couldn't patent them. They were nature's, and they were available to everybody. Well, now they broke the ice with this, and they've done it because there's a list a page long of things that cannabis actually truly does help, and in some cases cure. So it's clear.
You there? I just lost you. Greg? What else? I got that, got that one.
that you, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Well, I guess they didn't like what we were talking about.
I don't think they do. You know, and this is part of the divide and conquer. You know, Clay smokes dope. Clay wants to legalize marijuana, and they're absolutely right. Again, I stand accused and I plead guilty because I believe if a man with a badge can walk up to me and say, "What's that in your pocket? Do I smell marijuana?" then you live in a police state.
That is correct.
And Ayn Rand had it right. She said the government has no control over honest citizens, and so they got to make criminals out of us.
Well, Clay, look, control by authorities, whether it's with a badge or just authorities in general, politicians, courts, whatever. Look, I don't want to be crude on your show, but it truly is more sought after and more desirable than sex. Power, control, and money. That's the three legs of the country, and we're seeing it unfold in front of our eyes in regulations by the billions, fees and certification, and all of that to the tune of hundreds of man hours a year for most people, just to operate a business or to farm or to raise a garden. In some areas, Minneapolis, St. Paul being one of the earliest and most egregious, you could not raise your private garden. The excuse was, of course, that you might put something into the soil that would then contaminate the groundwater, and then blah, blah, blah. Of course, they didn't mention all the crap that government was making sure went into the soil, and the GMO crops that are poisoning us, killing us. Monsanto, that's Monsatan, is involved in. I knew one of their prime researchers, not there, I beg your pardon, it was a Pioneer Seeds, and you know, I knew him very, very well. And he said, "Well, we're not quite sure what's going to happen, but when you graft lightning bug parts into seeds, you know, I can't see where that's going to be good for me. It's killing the honeybees." And on the story goes, and they're worried whether or not a man wants to sit down and recreate with a product that's grown naturally and that is good for him. Where did we go into Alice in Wonderland, Clay? And we've got a 180-degree world here. They're controlling us, telling us what we can and cannot do, and I'm tired of it.
We have more Americans in prison right now, and many of them in there for victimless crimes. Victimless crime. No victim here. No victim here. And we've got more than any communist country out there, including Red China, that's got 3 or 4 times our population.
Clay, look, and I know you know this, because it can't have been lost on you, but the only reason that there are laws against the use of hemp is because the government doesn't like competition.
Right.
They don't want anybody competing with them, so they put up so many hurdles and these inane, stupid laws that they think they're going to stem the people from doing this. It's like gun ownership. Maybe it's going to get real tough now and in the days to come, but I'll tell you this, not going to be for me. I will maintain until my death the right to keep and bear a firearm, not to be offensive, not to go out and hold someone up, not to brutalize somebody, but to defend myself against pirates and the government.
Greg, this was the exact reason that I helped start the militias. And that's the reason Governor Gary Johnson gave us his approval. We worked for him. Well, and for them to twist it as they did and make it into something that it clearly was not, it is a script written in Washington by those in the elite groups, Council on Foreign Relations, the Bilderbergs, all the rest, that do form a worldwide conspiracy that does have at its central core the enslavement of all of mankind, and the last impediment to them is the United States of America, which they have basically defeated, but there's just a number of us that aren't going to go quietly into the night. It's really an economic defeat. I mean, and they've had us kind of by the balls for the last 100 years. That's correct. We're not going to solve this by elections. We've got 2 Zionists right now running for president.
Well, and as a result, we have just a perpetuation of what's been going on for generations. It is as clear as the nose in your face if you care to look down. But most people will not. They'll not take a look at Paul Warburg and his history of really taking the United States from about 1910 forward until his death. But then there's been people in the wings every time. It was Warburg and that cabal that met at Jekyll Island and that has really steered the financial agenda of the United States since that point. And it's all been with the idea that there would be those in control of that had a single agenda, and they answered to a single leader and or core of leaders that were communist and certainly had the background that we cannot live with, Clay. We cannot.
This is you know, our founding fathers fought the empire on which the sun never sets.
Yeah.
You know, and what's really happened here is we have become the British Empire. They predicted that. Cornwallis told Washington that the Jewish control of the religions and that we would remain a colony of England. And
well, it's occurred. It is, and regardless of anything else, the Rothschild, Amschel Bauer, and the rest of them are of Jewish descent, and they continue to run not only the so-called Rothschild, which they just pulled out of nothing, which means red shield in German, to what? To sanitize their background, to make them look more like the good old boys of Europe. Whatever the reason was, it has really reached that point where the indoctrination and the initiation of Luciferian forces that control this group worldwide, and that every president in the last probably 100 years at least that has gotten to that point or competed to be president has had to have that approval. We've just seen that ritual unfold with Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney is nothing more than one more player in the playbook. He's one more on the roster. Nothing will change. Boehner, Schumer, all of them are of this same ilk. We have been completely hijacked at every level. Courts, government, executive power, it is all under the same umbrella now, and that is, it cannot be more clear, Clay. Unless people want to just live in constant denial, which is more comfortable, they certainly can do that. But when they start paying 20 and 30% more for the crops that have been burned up in the field this year because of weather wars, and they realize the cattle that are no longer in the feedlots, and that the price of hamburgers now at $5 and going up. My wife just had a flyer the other day. On sale hamburger was $3.70 a pound. On sale. So tell me it's not going up. Of course it's going up. And the control of the food is the way that we'll control the population, and they've dumbed us down, and they will starve us out.
You know, I've talked with ranchers and farmers around the country, and they all tell me there's we got one problem. You know, besides fuel, besides what it takes to run a farm under these conditions, is we can't get help here. And I lived out in ranch country. They were gonna zone the place to and you know, come up and tell people what they can do with their water. Now, right now, up in, I believe it's in Washington, and it can happen, and there's probably a dozen, 100 stories in Colorado. A man has been arrested for gathering rainwater, putting it in a pond.
I just saw that. I couldn't believe it. I thought, what? Yeah, that's almost like in my world. There are some things that are just should be left alone. One thing is if people want to worship the way they want to worship in their home, don't tell me in Arizona or Phoenix that you know, they're going to come in and regulate that speech. I just don't believe in that, Clay. I mean, I may not even agree with what's being said there. I don't know, but they should have the right to do it privately within someone's home. And this rainwater thing and the garden thing, can't raise gardens, can't sell raw milk, can't even hardly trade it anymore, but what they send in, black-clad SWAT teams from the USDA. Used to joke about the chicken inspectors being armed, and they are. Poultry inspectors are armed, but to send in SWAT teams because a man raises, what, fresh goat milk or fresh cow milk, and that is suddenly a crime worthy of sending in an armed SWAT team to destroy their property. And what? There is no difference, Clay, absolutely none, between those activities and what the German SS did during World War II. In fact, I think we took it right out of their playbook, and that's why we're living the way we are.
Well, we did. It was called Operation Paperclip. And
correct.
I've read the diaries of the German, the head of the SS, Heinrich Müller. I've got his book right here. We indoctrinated. We brought him over here, made him a general. And there's basically, maybe you could, you know, iron me out on some of the fine points here. I think they fed us a false scale all along. I see Republicans and Democrats as being two wings of the same bird.
Correct. And
what's the difference between communism and fascism, and who won the Cold War?
Exactly right. Well, you know what really, and I'm not trying to be silly about this, but I'll tell you, this has created a. I could almost weep, Clay, for fellow veterans. My father, who flew a bomber during the war, and my great grandfather was in the U.S. Cavalry, and on it goes. A great tradition all the way back to the days of independence. I have family that fought in that war, and so I come from a long line of veterans, and I'm going, what in God's name did they fight for? What are they saying in the last moments of their the World War II vets, the last moments of their lives? And they're thinking, what did we do this for? We fought and defeated two world-class enemies, and now we're even worse off than some of our enemies were. How can, these poor people, I just weep for them, because they've given it all. Many of them wounded, men are hurt, and they're living through this god-awful time in our nation where we have surrendered to everything except freedom. I can't explain it to veterans when I talk to them. They just hang their heads. I feel so bad for them, Clay.
Well, I've told people since I've been doing this radio show, I took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. When I was 17 years old, I volunteered for Vietnam.
Yes.
I didn't go there because they basically tried to kill me before I got there, spinal meningitis. And but there was no expiration date on that oath. And
that's correct.
I read the Constitution. I just happened to do it in this little citizens rule book that I've got linked up on my site, and kind of blew me away that every plank on the Communist Manifesto, and we were supposed to be going into Vietnam. This is before I found out that the Gulf of Tonkin was bullshit. We were going to go into there to save the Vietnamese from communism, and every plank is intact in America today, from the central bank to the graduated income tax to the corporate farms, government control of agriculture.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We've adopted every line of it, and I truly do believe that it has been a major conspiratorial effort by both parties, by those who they bought off with corruption and bribes, judges who are given quiet awards for judging one way or the other. It is so it's so entrenched and it's so deep that there is no way to correct this. It needs to be burned out, like a infection you have. There's just some times where you need to cauterize the wound.